Emma.
And this is Fanimated, an animation fan podcast where we get a chance to geek out about our favorite animated media. And today, we're going to be talking about...
Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity.
Yeah! Finally, this one's been on my list forever.
Yes, it's definitely been a long time coming. And we're so excited to talk about it today.
Yes. So, spoiler warning right off the bat, if you haven't played Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, or if you haven't played Breath of the Wild.
I was just about to say, a spoiler alert for the game.
Yeah, because if you don't know, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity is a prequel to Breath of the Wild, and so it's good to know the story of Breath of the Wild before going in. And it is not a traditional Zelda game. It is a hack and slash video game developed by Omega Force, just using the Zelda franchise and characters, and it's basically you go and defeat a whole horde of enemies, and they put a little story together in the midst of that. So it is very different than normal Zelda gameplay, but it is a lot of fun.
Yes, you get the benefits of the Zelda universe, but you get to try a different format of video game with the Zelda world.
Exactly. So both Emma and I have played Breath of the Wild.
This is true, and defeated it.
And yep,
in different ways.
In very different ways. Emma likes to rush in with an axe.
It's true.
And I enjoy sniping enemies down from trees. Unfortunately, in Age of Calamity, you cannot snipe from trees. You just have to run in.
Nope, and you don't get any cool flying powers either.
No, which is a bummer.
It is a bummer.
But if you are, certain characters can fly.
That is true.
Yeah. So that's kind of, where we're coming from in the fact that we have played Breath of the Wild. We do like Zelda very much. And for me, though, this was my first Warriors game. They use other franchises to create Warriors games. And there also has been a Zelda Warriors game in the past. And I have not played any of those, so this was my first foray into this type of game even. So Emma, have you played this type of game before? Was this new to you?
This was new to me. If I have played this type of game, it was a while back and definitely on a PS2.
Nice. Yeah, so I was worried at first, hearing about the game back in 2020 when it released, I was going to buy it no matter what because it's Zelda, but and I wanted to know about the story, but I was like, oh, it's just fighting.
Instead of story. Well, there's story, but it's less about solving puzzles and more about fighting.
Exactly. And I really, really love the exploration and puzzle pieces of the Zelda franchise. That's what I really loved about my first Zelda game, and what I've always loved about Zelda games is that there's a mix, and there is some combat, but I also get to solve the puzzles, and it's there's a lot going on. And so to have a game that's just combat, I don't think I've ever played a game that's just combat.
No, I don't think I have either. And comparing the two, when I first started playing Hyrule Warriors, it was a little overwhelming because Zelda Breath of the Wild is open world, and so yes, there's a lot of choices, but you do have some sort of a path to follow. And with Age of Calamity, it's more you defeat one step in the process, and it is linear, there's different steps, but every time you complete one, there's a million other things that pop up on the map. It gives me anxiety every time. And so it left me feeling oh my gosh, do I do all these extra little things, or do I just keep going in the same path that I have been, or what does that look like? Of course, I stick to the path usually, but I just found that interesting, the different styles.
Absolutely. So they're definitely different games, but the same lovable characters, which I thought worked very well. It feels almost like you're in a Zelda game, and then you realize you can't fly or climb the walls, which is very sad. But everything looks the same. It looks like it's Breath of the Wild, which I thought was very cool.
That's the really wonderful part about it, is you just feel like you're immersing yourself back into the world of Breath of the Wild, which we both love and adore. So that's wonderful. And even though it is all fighting, the fighting is pretty cool.
Yes, I will also admit that I very quickly was like, oh yeah, this feels epic.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you go into a battle and you don't have to work hard to slay your enemies. Like, you hit once or twice, you strike, and 10 enemies go flying left and right. It's very satisfying. But there's so many, they just keep coming. It's hordes and hordes, and you keep slashing 12 and 15 at once, and it's just wow, it's very epic.
Yeah, it feels really great. Not gonna lie.
You feel like a boss.
Completely, yes. And that's what, these games are for. It's just it's just you get to be the epic adventurer here. And the draw of games like this, too, is that you get to play as a lot of different characters. You've got Link and Zelda, Impa, but then you've got literally everyone.
Yes, everybody. Everybody that you recognize from Breath of the Wild, you basically get to play, or at least all the significant characters. Mm-hmm. So we have all the classic Guardians, right? Which includes Mifa and Durak and Rivali and Urbosa. And we also have the character of Impa in her younger years, which is also a fun little tidbit.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And for me, I'll just say even though it's cool to have so many different characters, I only ever wanted to play as Link, and so I did.
Surprising no one.
I just want to be small, angry boy.
Yes, exactly. Link is super fun to play, though, because he, wields the sword, and his moves are really cool, and he's also a very efficient character. A lot of the different characters have special moves. We use the same buttons for the same actions, so to speak, but their actions are each different because they're different characters. And Link is pretty straightforward, slish slash, right? But everybody else is just oh, now this is a little water tornado, or this is a lightning strike, and you're okay, what is coming for each character?
And I found as well that when you switch to a new character that you hadn't used before, there is even though all the buttons are the same, there is a learning curve because they're so different.
Right.
And so for me, partially, sometimes I just felt oh, this is frustrating. And I think we ran into some of those instances in game. Sometimes in the middle of a battle, you can you get a new character and you're oh, you want to try this out. But then we're oh, well, we can't use them because we don't know how to. And we can't use them as efficiently as the characters we're used to playing. So we can't beat the level with this character because we don't know how to use them.
Right. Even though it's the same buttons, it's you just don't expect what they're going to do as far as their moves. So along the way, we just collect our favorites and are okay, this is what I'm comfortable with. This is the character who I can predict their moves the most, and so I'm going to stick with them. And for Kelly, of course, that's Link, because he's great.
Yeah. I mean, I just, I've got the Master Sword. What else do you need? So how was Urbosa, playing mostly as Urbosa over there, Emma?
I will say I played the majority of the game as Urbosa. I loved playing her character. She was my favorite. She is just a boss character in general. I love everything that she is. But besides the character, she was really fun to play because I love her lightning moves. She's just constantly striking left and right with lightning. And when you get into the midst of battle and you gain so much hit points, you get to use a special move. And her special attacks are usually this wide plane of lightning just surrounds the enemies, and she struts in the middle of her circle and puts her fingers in the air and snaps her fingers, and then the lightning strikes and they're all dead. And it's just like, yeah, you're a BA woman. like it's so fun. And there's a couple other special attacks that happen too that just, they're just so powerful. And so anyway, I really loved her style, and that was another character that I easily was able to understand her moves. So I felt comfortable playing Urbosa, and as a result, I ended up playing like the whole game as Urbosa.
Exactly. We got into the groove with Link and Urbosa, and it was awesome. I should say, to clarify, like, we did play this multiplayer the entire way through. There is a multiplayer option, and before we played together, and we've been working on this basically for 2 years, so little bits here and there, but before that I also played the whole thing on my own in single player, and that's another piece that I think is a good, like, what's the word I'm looking for, just like a benefit to this game, that I think it's worth playing in multiplayer more so than single player. Like, I had more fun in multiplayer.
Yeah, it's totally a blast, like, kicking your enemies' butts when you have another person there with you, especially when we got to harder levels where there are more enemies to defeat, and we could be like, okay, you're going to go to this side of the map, I'm going to go to this side, and we'll meet at this point. All right, break.
Yes, like, it was divide and conquer, and it feels so much more satisfying, like, achieving something like that together. Like, there's some of these battles are hours long, and when we finish, it's just like the best feeling, and it's just like, we did this.
Yes, it is the best feeling, because there would be moments where we'd be like, okay, let's try a level tonight, we've got time, and we get done at like 10:30, 11 at night, and we're like, oh my god, how did that happen?
It's later than we usually stay up.
It's true, we're kind of old women in that way.
Yes.
But the only factor where you play single player mode, even if you are doing multiplayer, is when you have to use one of the guardians. And so when you're working this machine, so like there's like the big elephant, right? And there's the big it's not an iguana. Yeah, there's a bird.
Yeah.
The reptile, the lizard?
Lizard?
Yeah.
It's a specific lizard.
And the camel, right? So you got these 4 big machines, and with that you have to do single player mode. And of course, since Kelly had already played the game, that was put on my shoulders to play that part. I do not like playing the Guardians personally, but they're just difficult to maneuver. Their moves are interesting, but once again, it's just like, you become familiar with certain characters' moves, and for the Guardians, you only use them 4 times throughout the whole game, because there's 4 of them, and it's, at times that are far apart from each other, so it's just like, how do I work this thing again?
Yeah, like coming into this game's release, it was one of the draws of the game, I think, for a lot of people, is like, oh, you actually get to play as these giant ancient, war machines, basically. Like, oh, that's so cool. And for me, I was just like, yeah, I agree. I think it's the worst parts of the game are playing as the Guardians, because they're just so hard to maneuver. And like, I was just so frustrated most of the time. They use a lot of motion controls that don't work very well, and it just became frustrating. So thankfully, there aren't a ton of those moments, but you have to get through them to continue on in the game. You can't skip it.
Exactly.
So that was frustrating.
I did like the move that they had. They have like a laser that is a special attack, and you can just like shoot it and like scan the planes because you're looking out at the whole like world, and then you see a bunch of enemies annihilated. That's a little satisfying. But overall, I constantly found myself being like clicking a button and then being like, nope, that's not the one that I wanted to click. And then you gotta wait for the move to be over. So yeah, that was my least favorite part, but it's part of the experience, I guess.
Exactly. I will say too, while we're on like negative parts of the game, like a small thing, but especially in multiplayer and especially with her Bosa, it felt like whenever she used her lightning powers, the frame rate dropped to nothing almost, and basically I would just sit and wait for it to be done because I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah, it's hard to see because it's like seeing it all in slow motion basically, and you're like, I'm just gonna wait for this special move to be over.
Yeah, because there's so much happening with so many different enemies and the lightning, because the lightning's not just happening in your screen, it's like mine too, and it's a lot for the little Switch to handle. Yes. I don't think it like severely impacted our playthrough or our enjoyment of the game, but it is something definitely to point out that technically it the frame rate dropped quite a bit.
Yeah, when it came to those moments, we're like, all right, here we go, special attack. And it was like, all right, here comes the big power move, we're ready. Yeah. And we just like watch it like a show.
Yes, exactly.
We should talk about a couple of the other characters, even though we don't play them as much.
Sure.
Well, one of them that I'd like to mention is Mifa. I found that she was fun to play, but once again, I just like Urbosa was my favorite, so I just went with Urbosa. But Mifa is fun. She's got her trident, and she can like swim around in midair, which is kind of cool. But she was somebody I also enjoyed playing. And then the other person I really wanted to mention was Zelda, just because in the beginning, I do not like playing her at all. Her ability is like with her Sheikah slate, and I'm sorry, it's just kind of dumb. I'm just like, Zelda, you are a boss lady, and I'm sorry, the hand that you were dealt, I don't like it. But later on in the video game, she gets an upgrade because she goes through this transformation, and suddenly she has really cool powers, and she gets to use that golden bow or whatever it's called. And then you're like, oh, playing Zelda is super fun.
I 100% agree. That was on my notes because, like, Zelda is so boring to play at the beginning. Like, you're just like, finally, a game where you can be Zelda, right?
Right. And there's some moments where you have to be Zelda and Link. So it's like,
you have to be them, yeah.
Man, one of us has to be it.
Yes. But then once she awakens her Triforce powers, it's like completely like 180 turn of one of the most fun characters to play, and that light bow is amazing, and it's just like, yeah, I agree, she's fantastic.
Yeah, I really enjoy playing Zelda.
My like second though would probably be Impa.
Yeah, you played Impa a lot.
I played Impa quite a bit because I don't know, for whatever reason I was drawn to her and really got the groove of her. She's one of the characters you also get really early on, and so I had a lot of time to get to know her bonus sets and everything. And the cool thing about Impa is that she gets to have doubles. So basically, if you know how to play her right, you get to gather up all of this like Sheikah energy, and then she's able to have like an army of Impas, basically. And it's just like, you can absolutely mow everyone down. It's fantastic. Plus, it just is cool. Impa's like BA and awesome.
Yes. I really enjoyed watching you play Impa because, yeah, all of her doubles are like blue spirit form, and it's just really cool to see her just wipe out an army like with one blow. She was a character that I had trouble finding the groove. I was just like, I know what her powers are, but I can't seem to work it just right. So, but at least I got the benefit of seeing you play her more often.
Yes, yes. Any other characters you wanted to point out?
Not really. I mean, I will say my least favorite to play was Rivali.
Yeah.
He can fly, but like it's not a flying that is fun, like swooping up in the air and doing like really high climbs. It's more of like just floating around the battlefield.
You almost can't control it.
Yeah, it is very uncontrollable, which is, it's hard to be efficient in the battlefield when you can't control it.
I will note that my least favorite is Daruk because, again, I'm used to playing little, fast, dexterous Link. And when you're this big, hulking guy, I am just like, what is happening? I want to be able to jump over everything.
Sometimes on the battlefield, though, we found that we had no choice but to play every character. And what I mean by this is, depending on how many characters you have in a scene, you can switch characters. So let's say there's 4 on the battlefield, and Urbosa is not doing so great health-wise, and we ain't got any apples to spare, then I might switch to Zelda or Daruk or whoever's available and start playing with them, which is nice. It's a nice benefit, like, to switch over. But then you're like, oh, dang it, I gotta do what I can with this character because my other character doesn't have life.
Yes, we ran into that a lot of, like, completely losing our health. And the problem with this, well, not problem, but like the gameplay is such that if even one of your characters dies, it's game over. You start over from whatever place you were at. And so if even one of our characters would get down to like 1 heart left or half a heart left, we dip out of there, because if you play a different character, no matter what happens, the character who's left with just a little bit of health, like, they won't die because you're not playing them right now. So we would have to kind of use our resources in using our characters that way as like basically other lives, because I did find that there was not a lot of, like, the apples are the way you gain health back. There just weren't as many of them as we needed, and whether that is the way we played or whether that is a fault in the development of this game, but either way, we did run into that problem a lot, and maybe that's part of them pushing you to play other characters. I don't know.
Could be. Sometimes there would be moments where one of us would be like, all right, you fight off this enemy, I'm gonna go search for apples, because both of us would be struggling, and we're like, we need some health, and we just go breaking boxes to find apples.
Yes, yeah. Again, as multiplayer, like that just brings about, again, like how much fun it is to play with 2 people, and when you are in a dire strait like that, you have someone else to go help, because playing it in single player was just like, so overwhelming, because there are just some levels I'd have to do over and over again, just because, like, you almost have to be in 2 places at once,
right? And
it was very challenging. And it's so nice to be able to play it with another person. So, like, when we do have to break up to, like, go get apples or something, we can help each other out, and it's not quite as frustrating.
Yeah, and I mean, there's pros and cons to sharing resources. It was nice that if Kelly picked up an apple, that's an apple I could use, even though I'm in a different place completely. Or, like, there was different, like, magic pieces that we could pick up to help with our powers and so on and so forth. So that was really helpful to share resources. But sometimes you also are like, I need health real bad, and then you, like, look for your apples and you're like, oh, Kelly just had the last apple, or Emma just had the last apple, dang it. So there's pros and cons to sharing the resources, but it's fun.
It definitely, like, at least we were very collaborative and had to communicate a lot. So we would communicate to each other just about, hey, I'm going to do my special move now, so save yours. Or, oh, I just grabbed an apple, there's 1 left, or whatever it is. So, or like, oh, I'm heading to this part of the map, if you head to that part of the map, or whatever. So that we can make it happen and get through each battle. So, yeah, again, I just really enjoyed the multiplayer aspect, and if you got a friend to play with, it's 10 times more fun.
Yeah, I mean, that was the best part of this experience, is just playing a Zelda game, like, from a world that we both love and enjoy and geek out about, and being able to play it together was just the best thing ever.
Because neither of us really play that many multiplayer games at all, and so it was like, this is so much fun.
Yeah, it was so much fun, and we are really great communicators, so we did well.
Just dust off my shoulders. It's fine. We're just fantastic.
No big deal.
It's almost like we could do a podcast together or something.
What?
We work together so well.
It's crazy.
What? Okay, so we've talked a lot about the gameplay and the characters and everything. Let's talk about what is different about this game versus Breath of the Wild, and that is that it has a story. I'm sorry, it was one of my big critiques of Breath of the Wild is that the story doesn't really exist. I like that Breath of the Wild story is your own story, what you create out of it. But after that, I was very excited. For me, at least, the biggest thing going into this game's release was I'm excited to hear more about the story, and we got that. You get a ton of cutscenes in this game. So, basic synopsis. If you don't already know, Breath of the Wild takes place after the Great Calamity, in which Ganon basically annihilates all of Hyrule, and Link wakes up 100 years later. It's very post-apocalyptic, and he's got to go set everything right. This Age of Calamity is the prequel, and so it takes place before the end of the Hyrule, basically, and shows how that came about. But in true Zelda fashion, there's time travel. What? And so Age of Calamity actually starts with this robot egg called Egbert is what I say. But I does he have a name? He does have a name. At the very end, Zelda says his name. I don't know. It's Egbert, okay? And Egbert, the calamity is happening or something, and he travels back in time and to before all of this, and he runs into Link and Zelda, and like Link is a knight, and Zelda's being her princessy self and trying to like be figure out the guardians and all of that, and basically they go through all of the events that lead to Ganon regaining his power and taking over, except instead of the normal timeline in which everything goes to crap, there are Egbert basically helps pull helpers out of the timeline, and which basically means all of the cool people you met in Breath of the Wild, and brings them back 100 years to help you, and so you can play as them and fight battles with them, right? And so because of that, the tides are turned, and you get to save all of Hyrule instead. So they just end up breaking the timeline into two different timelines. And I'll just say right now, I was not a fan, but but I also was not surprised, okay? Because it's Zelda. What did I expect? Of course, they're going to mess with the timeline.
Right. I will say that it threw me off. I was not expecting a happy ending. I was kind of like, this sounds terrible, but I was kind of looking forward to the ending of Calamity Ganon taking over, and then you're like, ooh, spooky, but wait, there's more. Go play Breath of the Wild. So I was anticipating that, because the whole time that we were playing, I was like, well, we know what happens next. We know that you're gonna die. We know that you're gonna die. And I was constantly saying these things. And also, I just gotta say this now. From the beginning, I was never a fan of Egbert. Okay? I didn't trust him.
Emma was very suspicious of this cute, adorable, helpless little egg.
Yeah, no. You may call it cute and adorable, but I was like, no. You're following Zelda, and she's just like, who are you? Maybe you're a friend. I'll let you come along. And he's constantly in the background of different scenes and somehow incorporated with her past. And I'm like, I don't trust this guy. He's gonna trigger all these different guardians, and then chaos ensues. Well, he proved me wrong, I guess, but
he does go evil for a little tiny bit there.
He does. And that was the point where I was like, I told you so. But alas, not for long. But anyway, I was anticipating the ending, and when the time travel pieces happened, I was like, wait, what? Like, if it's a happy ending, then what about Breath of the Wild? Like, my storyline was just kind of screwed up in my head. So, I get it, like, why they do what they do, and it is nice to have a happy ending, I guess, but I could have done without the time travel part.
Yes, I would agree. I was looking forward to the emotional resonance of working so hard at like defeating these enemies, and knowing like almost every single player who plays this game knows what happens is that the world ends. Yeah, everyone dies and the world ends. And I was I agree, like not in a depressing way, but looking forward to how they were going to kind of present that and kind of like present this kind of I mean, it's just such a cool way to get to experience like Link and Zelda's relationship to all of these people that we know died. And like it still like can affect your gameplay of Breath of the Wild in that, you're remembering all these scenes and moments with these characters. But I don't know. I was looking for them to really pull on that emotional string.
It gives you a platform to be solemn about what happened and then appreciate the hope that is in Breath of the Wild. With, you get to that story. Well, I know there isn't much of a story, but the pieces of story that there are, you are reminiscing on the past and then defeating Ganon for real now that you're awakened 100 years later. So I don't know. I feel like it could have really set up a really cool platform, and it didn't, but what do you do?
I will say that there are a lot of really cool character moments, and you do get to know these characters so much better. And like, I genuinely thoroughly enjoyed like a lot of it. It's just like, it wasn't as deep as I would have hoped, I guess.
Yes. I am very thankful for all the cutscenes we did get to enjoy, because in Breath of the Wild, you mainly just have the memories. And I just loved seeing, Link and Zelda interact with each other and be the cutest pair ever.
You mean we got a freaking love story? Finally? Oh my goodness. Like when, again, spoiler alert, Link is about to die, and that's when Zelda awakens her powers because she loves him.
And she wants to protect him.
And it's so cute. It's a very, very cool scene. And man, it gets me all hyped for Breath of the Wild 2. Like, I just want it. But I'm also like, they probably won't have like tons of story beats if it's anything like Breath of the Wild. So...
And that's what's nice about this game, is it gives us those story beats that we long for, because, in these cutscenes we get to see more character development, and we don't just see like the serious side of Zelda and Link, but we get to see their fun, cute moments when they're hanging out, and same thing with the other characters too. And it's so sweet. It's
so sweet. Link is such an idiot.
What? Link? Small angry boy?
Small angry boy eats a rock.
I forgot about that.
And I love him.
Oh my goodness. And then like one of my favorite cutscenes is just seeing like the different champions like interact with Zelda or other characters. Like there's this scene where Urbosa is just taking care of Zelda, like she's fallen asleep and is napping, and Urbosa's just looking after her and, speaking words of affirmation. And I just love seeing that side of her as well, because she is this big, strong character, and you see how much she cares as well. So it's just character moments like that I love.
Absolutely. I agree. One other thing just about how the game is set up that I want to comment on, I don't think it's like a horrible thing or anything. It's just a thing, and something that we didn't really utilize because we were playing differently. But there are a lot of like ways to boost your weapons and boost your characters, and like lots of different side quests you can do, and like just like you can even like cook meals that give you different like stat upgrades to certain things. Like there are so many different ways to, I guess, customize your battle in that way, and like boost your characters in that way, that we honestly did not touch.
Nope.
And I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing that you can get through the entire game without even touching like a quarter of it.
Maybe we're just that good, Kelly.
I mean, I really want to pretend that we are, but
No, it's so true. Like, this is the anxiety I was talking about. Every time we would complete a battle, then it brings you back to the map, and then suddenly it like brings up all these different side quests. It's like ding 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 ding, and all these different icons show up on your map, and I'm like, oh, there's more. And they're just all like side battles, which some you do need to like boost your level. You need to get certain experience in. So there are some side quests that are necessary, but like upgrading tools and eating meals. I mean, the only things you collect in battle are apples and money, basically. So you don't really need anything else.
I mean, yeah, like I literally never once in either of my playthroughs made a meal.
Nope. And like, I think about how in Breath of the Wild, you like try to save your rupees, right? And so that way you can upgrade things. And in Age of Calamity, we had so much money, but we didn't need it.
And yeah, it was not even out for us, at least. Mm-hmm. If we could buy apples, this would be a different story. But
right, totally.
you can't buy them. You can only find them. Anyway, so that's just like an interesting aspect of the game that we just didn't utilize a lot of those things. But if you do enjoy them, then that's awesome. And they're there for you. And maybe you're also one of those people who's actually like playing all the characters.
Right.
You know, like, and actually doing all the I mean, you know, it's fun stuff you can do in a fun game. And we just didn't end up using it.
Yeah, because there are a lot of characters because not only are there the champions, Impa, Zelda, and Link, but there's a couple others in there too, like Urbosa's queen and the guy with the maracas. I don't remember their names. Hestu, I think is the name.
Hetsu? Hetsu.
Yeah.
It's Hetsu.
Yep. So we've got characters like that. There's a couple more in there. And with the multitude of characters, it's like if you are playing to upgrade all of them and use all of them pretty evenly, then maybe some of those quests would make sense. But we obviously stuck to some favorites and didn't find it necessary.
Another like just cool thing that I want to reemphasize is like you get to explore all of the places in Breath of the Wild again, but in a different way. Mm-hmm. Like you get to explore like the Citadel, but in battle and right. like before it's completely torn apart. And that was just cool. Or like the castle town. Like yeah. You get to explore the castle town before, like in Breath of the Wild, it's rubble. Right. It's like nothing is there. And so I really enjoyed that like piece of it.
Yeah, it was a good part of the art and the animation was just being able to see something that used to be. Like you're taking a step back in history. Like that was really fun. I agree. Another thing that I found helpful in this game is because of the combat style, you couldn't like get too far off of your route. Like you had to stick to certain paths, which I think is helpful because otherwise, you know, we would just flee and retreat. But I did notice that that's different structurally too, whereas in Breath of the Wild, you have more of, you can literally go anywhere you want, climb anything if you set your mind to it. So that's a notable difference as well.
Yeah, and again, like we said, it's almost, because it looks so much like Breath of the Wild, it's almost like you have to readjust your brain too into, can I go there or can I not? Because in Breath of the Wild, you can just jump over it. But it's almost like instead of following what you saw on the screen, at least for me, I had to follow the map. Like, I'm watching the map to see where I can or cannot go instead of just following the world.
That's true. That's true. Because you can only follow the world so much because there is like a road or a path, but it's still got this openness in the animation that you're like, well, I don't know exactly where I'm going, so I better follow the map. Especially since it's combat style, you're looking for specific enemies and you need to conquer them. I remember when we were in the last level and we had 5 different Ganons to defeat before the big bad?
Yes.
So
yes, indeed. It was traumatic.
So we're going all over this map just to find these Ganons and defeat them, and then not to mention all the guardians along the way. Oh my goodness, it was just one enemy after the other. I wonder how many hours we spent on that last level.
Ooh, a lot.
It was a long journey.
It was. And I'll add to that, another good thing about this game is that, even though it's a lot of the same repetitive hack and slash sort of stuff, they still are changing it up with stuff like that. Or oh, these guys, you have to protect a certain area while also trying to attack a certain area or stuff like that. And I appreciated that. I feel like difficulty did increase, not only in a technical standpoint in how hard the enemies are or whatever, but also just in a tactical standpoint of okay, now you have 5 Hinoxes and some little, I don't know, goblins, just goblins or everything coming at you, and oh, by the way, you need to defeat these helicopter things,
Yeah, or escort Zelda to this place. There's always a little extra added onto your mission, which makes me even more thankful that we played this in multiplayer mode.
Again, it is very challenging single player, and it's more fun with the multiplayer.
Yes, because it's more fun to strategize with another person.
It is.
Because you can, like we said, divide and conquer, which made this a fun experience.
Except when you decide to divide and conquer and find out that you didn't need to, because you spend an hour trying to defeat all these enemies and keep getting slaughtered when you should have just gone up to the castle and done that other thing instead of taking on these enemies, because it's designed that you're not supposed to defeat those enemies, but we spent hours trying to defeat them.
That, folks, wow, that was a crazy time. We died so many times just defeating this horde of enemies.
And we were working ourselves up. We can do it one more time. We have to. We were really, really, going here. And every time we just couldn't do it. And we were why? Do we even try again? And thank goodness we did, because otherwise that entire battle we would have had to start over. Yeah. Because it was right at the end, and literally all we had to do was cross a bridge.
Literally. I mean, I think there was one playthrough where I was just okay, this clearly isn't working. I'm just going to try going this way and defeating these enemies. And then crossing that bridge, a cutscene happened. And we're oh my gosh, this was here the whole time. And we've been spending our time elsewhere.
It's almost like we're overachievers. Yeah.
Not wrong. This is me and Kelly in the midst of video games. It's true. We overachieve in every part of life, and even imaginary worlds. It's wonderful.
Oh, fantastic.
Thinking too hard, 101.
Oh, man. So, do you think you would play a Warriors game again?
I think it would depend on what it is, because a big part of what I liked about this Warriors game is that it was the world of Breath of the Wild. So I had a connection, loved the characters. So I would need to know the characters and enjoy, have an appreciation for the world, I think, in order to enjoy this kind of game setup, because I do really like the puzzles and storylines and everything like that come in other games. And to do a game that's just combat, one, I would only do it with someone else again. And two, just it would have to be something that I connect to.
I completely agree because, yeah, a full-on combat game isn't something I always am drawn towards, but a huge part of what was fun about this game was because it was Zelda and it was all these characters that we love and the story that we love, you know. I think that's why these games even sell well, is because they just use franchises that people love, and then they, make another opportunity for you to play as those characters. So I think I am pretty excited for the Fire Emblem Three Houses Warriors game.
Oh, yeah. That's going to be so much fun.
I think I definitely want to play that because, especially after having this Warriors game experience, I was like, yeah, because, it's the same exact thing of, like, especially with Fire Emblem game, there's tons of characters that you love, and getting to be able to play them again in a different setting like this would be pretty cool.
Yeah, especially, and there's an example of just being connected to a world already because you have played Fire Emblem Three Houses, and with that connection, it just makes it more fun.
Exactly. So who knows, maybe we'll play that together.
That would be really fun.
All right, well, I think that's it for our Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity discussion.
Yes, it was a long journey to finish the game, but boy, we did it, and it was worth it.
So, thank you so much for listening. If you want to hear even more content, not like we already have over 100 episodes for you to listen to right now, but I do have dozens of bonus episodes on patreon.com/Fanimated for just $1 a month or a little more if you want to help us out. You can listen to all of those bonus episodes. You can vote for upcoming episode topics, and you get the schedule for every single episode that we release every month so that you know what's coming up. If you'd like to support us, again, that's patreon.com/Fanimated. And huge shout out to everyone in the Fanimated crew over there that already supports us, keeps us on the air. We appreciate you so much. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Fanimated Podcast to stay up to date with all things animated. And don't forget to leave us a rating and review telling us what we should be watching next. The music is written by Jamie Krause, and the art is done by myself. You can find me on Instagram at CandorDraw. We will be back in a couple of weeks with said Jamie Krause to talk about another awesome anime this time. Jamie and I have been watching lots of great anime, and we've got one that we're really excited to talk about. So, in the meantime, stay tuned
and stay animated.
It was so worth it. So thank you for being here and listening to this fun. I'm going to start over because I hate doing this every time. I'm like, how do I transition?
Segue.
Segue. So.
You got this.